to our next topic. I invite Dr. Sundar T. He's Director of Lung Transplantation, Cardiothoracic Surgeon in Apollo Hospital, Chennai, to talk about heart, lung, or lung transplantation in patients with PAH.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Welcome.
I would like to thank the organizers for giving me this opportunity. And I'm just going to share my screen in a second. Heart lung transplant Indian experience, when to refer and what to expect. I'll give an overview on lung transplant, pulmonary hypertension, donor and recipient considerations, and the Indian scenario. So, as regards pulmonary artery hypertension, we have two time points. One is referral for lung transplant, and the next is listing for lung transplant. In referral for lung transplant, you look at potentially eligible patients for whom lung transplant might be an option. We have an objective criteria where a reveal score greater than 7 or a high or an intermediate score in the ERS guidelines would suggest a referral for lung transplant, or patients who have been having frequent hospitalizations or need for prostacyclin therapies, or signs of secondary organ dysfunction such as liver and kidney. If you come for listing, these are patients whose objective scoring has increased, a reveal score of greater than 10 with progressive hypoxemia or worsening of the liver and kidney function. Now, this is just a quick slide on the reveal scoring system. You've got numerous variables. You add them mathematically, lower the score, better the survival. And this is just a general slide on the importance of timing of referral to transplant. On the left side, you have patients who are very well for a transplant, and such patients can wait. At the same time, on the right side, we have patients whose disease is far too gone, multiple organs have been involved, multi-organ failure, where it would be a exercise in vanity to do a transplant. Between these two is the transplant window, and the trick is in identifying the correct time for transplantation. And the general indications for any transplant, for that matter, is there's a high risk of death from the disease in question if you don't transplant in 2 years. There's a high chance of survival of 90 days after the transplant. And there's a high chance, greater than 80, of surviving 5 years from a general medical perspective, such as other comorbidities such as a heart disease, diabetes, hypertension, and the rest of it. Coming to pulmonary artery hypertension and transplant, the risk factors for a poor outcome would be a low sodium, high bilirubin, a TAPC of less than 1.8, pulmonary hypertension and association with connective tissue disease, COPD, sarcoid, or IPF in that order. Coming to idiopathic pulmonary artery hypertension, the indications are quite standard and objective criteria, including an NYHA function class of 3 to 4, despite maximal medical therapy, a declining 6-minute walk test, and a failing therapy with prostaglandins, cardiac index of less than 2 liters per minute per meter square, or a right atrial pressure of greater than 15 millimeters of mercury. So we would like to optimize them as much as is possible by drug therapy, look at nutritional optimization, pulmonary rehab. We would encourage oxygen supplementation during mobilization and trying to keep the heart rate below 125 during mobilization, and of course, assess the liver and the kidney. So these are the organs affected by vascular congestion because of the high PVR, the right ventricular fails, and you would have effects on the renal. You have cardiorenal syndromes where you assess the renal biochemical parameters, look at the creatinine, GFR, and clearance. At times, go even for a renal biopsy. If there is evidence of end-stage renal or liver dysfunction, a combined transplant might be thought of. A cardiohepatic syndrome or a cardiogenic liver injury due to a failing right ventricle could affect the synthetic function of the liver, elevate the enzymes, bilirubin. The portal pressures could be high. Fibroscan could be helpful to identify the amount of fibrosis or even a liver biopsy. So the preoperative challenges are use of ECMO. An ECMO could be used as a bridge to transplant, and an established indication is a person who's been worked up, who is on the waiting list for a transplant. If he deteriorates, an ECMO could help. And in highly selected cases where the transplant decision is not yet done, and you do that on potentially eligible patients. And in rare cases, bridge could be used for recovery in patients with untreated or undiagnosed reversible cause of right ventricular failure. In our institution, we try and see if we can do an awake ECMO. Soon after we institute ECMO, we extubate the patient. And this clip shows the patient is on ECMO. That's the ECMO console, you can see the pipes going from the internal jugular vein. He's performing intensive spirometer. This allows oral feed. It allows the patients to communicate, boosts morale, and helps physical rehabilitation. In acute exacerbation, management of right ventricle is often necessary to handle cardiogenic shock. So we had a patient with ILD and PAH who deteriorated. We put a VV ECMO, but the right ventricle failed. We put a VV ECMO and VA ECMO, adding an arterial line to the femoral artery, but he suffered a Harlequin syndrome because of poor blood, oxygenated deoxygenated blood returning to the heart. So he needed another cannula into the right internal jugular, what we call a VAV ECMO, and had a transplant. Ideal operation is a double lung transplant for all patients. In selected patients, heart lung transplant. Some units do single lung transplant, but that is not done in general. The main complications include a primary graft dysfunction, and in PAH in particular, because it's a chronically underfilled and a stiff left ventricle because of high pulmonary vascular resistance in the diseased lung. You take out the lung and put a new lung in, the PVR falls, and the LA is not used to such amount of return, and pulmonary edema resolves. This is a patient with PGD post-transplant, which resolved on ECMO. So the post-operative management, PAH is like a disease which has the highest incidence of PGD, and the mortality is highest in the first 3 months. We just discussed about the decreases and the differences due to a high PVR turning into a low PVR. Same scenario again. We've changed our practices in terms of induction chemotherapy in view of increasing sepsis in our condition. And our results, we have done about 73 hearts and 179 lungs in various proportions of heart, combined heart, lung, double lung, and single lung. And this is our results, which we published in the Journal of Cardiovascular Practice of Cardiovascular Sciences. We have a 3-year survival of 76%. Now, breaking down the survival, the best survival is in bronchiectasis. Having said that, we have done only 2 patients of that, so it really doesn't hold water. Idiopathic pulmonary hypertension, our survival is 80%, and ILD is 66%, and the overall being 76%. So for pulmonary artery hypertension, we've had 11 patients done so far, 9 heart lung transplant and 2 double lung transplant with a 1-year survival of 80%. So looking at the Indian scenario, this is a review article published in the Indian Journal of Thoracic and Cardiovascular Surgery, the evolution of lung transplant in India and the current scenario. We've had data from the Intran, which was Indian Transplant Registry formed by the Indian Society of Heart and Lung Transplant, data from websites and various units and direct communication. This map shows the states where lung transplant is done predominantly in Maharashtra, Karnataka, Tamil Nadu, and of course in Chandigarh and Punjab. And this is where heart and double lung has been done, again, predominantly in the southern states. And this shows the amount of hours allotted to lung transplant in various conferences. And as you can see, lung transplant is gaining importance. And this is the number of lung transplant done in India state-wise, Tamil Nadu leading the group. We have done about totally 330 transplants. This is year-wise analysis. As you can see, it started in 2007. It started rising up from 2015, 2019, and then the COVID came, and there was a lull for the last 1 year. So these are the transplant figures in other states such as Telangana and Maharashtra. Condition specific to India is the presence of TB, which we have to deal with. The next important thing is patients are typically virtually bedbound with disuse atrophy and loss of muscle. They have an impact on weaning off the ventilator and mobilizing, and hence have poor outcomes. This slide pretty much says the vicious cycle, and this slide shows the patient on rehab using a Leto device. So the recommendations would be to keep assessing or repeat the risk assessment at frequent intervals to identify the correct timing, because timing is the only thing. We've got objective methods to risk assess them, such as the REVEAL score, and bilateral lung transplant is the treatment of choice, and there is no degree of right ventricular dysfunction which can stop a lung transplant. And despite advances in ICU management and ECMO and other mechanical circulatory support, the ideal patient is an ambulant outpatient. And some units use ECMO even after transplant to identify and prevent early graft dysfunction. Given the low number and high-risk patients, this procedure is best done under specialized centers. And that's our transplant team. Thank you for your attention.